Welcome everyone to the first virtual town hall of 2022. To echo something Mike and Ron have both shared over the last 2 years with the events, I'm truly grateful for everyone taking a little bit of the time out of their day to join us here. The hope is that you learn a little bit more around what's happening at ENA and engage with your fellow members. You can see in the chat, we're kind of all saying where we're from, so it's great to see everyone. Let me also say hello to the members of the ENA Board of Directors who have also joined us today. It was really great to see everyone last week, including Joop and Vanessa, when we met in Denver. Working together in person leads really to much more meaningful discussion and engagement. And it was a real feeling we all had leaving leadership in January and then again last week when we were previewing in Denver. So that brings me to why we're going to continue these town halls. I think while virtual, it is another way that we can engage with all of you, share information, and hopefully answer some of your questions about things that are going on. It's been nice to see kind of the evolution of the virtual town halls. And though maybe originated out of necessity during the pandemic, now is another outlet for all of us to connect on a more regular basis. And so we really appreciate that and hope that all of you do as well. So I would encourage you all, thank you for coming today, but also to continue to encourage others to join throughout the year. So as a reminder for those of you who have attended a virtual town hall in the past, or if you're new to the event, you can add your comments directly into the chat. We'll also be taking questions through the chat, so you can communicate with us directly there. We're watching that. But share your stories, your experiences, and please ask questions. If you're new to ENA or to the Town Hall Forum, please introduce yourself. We love recognizing new people and connecting with one another. We'll try to get as many questions and comments in as we can before the hour is up. And so don't forget, we're also recording this session, so you can revisit it if you miss anything in the live version. So before we get to new headlines, let me kick off with a few things and reflections, and please feel free to share yours as we go through. So somehow in 2022, it is already mid-March. Time really does fly when you're having fun. We've seen the pandemic make a few dramatic shifts this year, but the world necessarily isn't any less complicated. And so as you've seen from some of the messages we've sent out to members, the issues facing emergency nurses continue to be in the spotlight. And in just a few short months for me, I've seen not only things change and shift, but how committed our members are both to each other and to emergency nursing as a whole. And that's it's really incredible, and I'm really proud to see all of us engaging that way. So let's check in quickly. Anything in the chat, Dan, that we need to address?
So, nothing in the chat other than a lot of shout outs from across the country. So we're, our numbers are going up in here right now, and it's great to see a lot of familiar names and some unfamiliar names from members around the country for now.
Great, thank you. And again, feel free to post a comment or anything to us there. We're happy to answer it. So let's get into some of the ENA headlines, because there's certainly a lot going on there to share with all of you. So to start, I really want to offer a little bit of insight into how ENA developed some of the statements and messages that you've seen come out from on behalf of the organization around key issues facing nurses right now. One was our donation relief efforts to the Ukraine and the transgender care order in Texas. And so while my name is prominent in these messages, they are crafted based on conversations with key ENA leaders and subject matter experts. So we take the stance that are rooted in position statements that are relevant to our practice and really developed by our committees and approved by the board, so that we are consistent with the association's mission, and we really rely on that evidence to kind of direct us. And so really wanted to share with this group that we understand the responsibility and the accountability we have to members and to the emergency nursing community, particularly when we decide to speak up on a topic. And so what you see created is really done with thought and purpose. And I encourage you to send feedback, whatever that might be, to keep the dialogue open and so that we continue to know that we are representing all of you well as we're doing this. So let's move on to some of the exciting stuff and maybe some big news for the day. So this slide in and of itself is exciting. So we have registration opening for EN22 tomorrow, this week. Tomorrow's Thursday. And so now we get to start the countdown for our first fully in-person, though with some on-demand access or digital access, demand conference in 2 years. This is really exciting news. And so you will see more about registration in your email and on our social media platforms. What can't be said enough is the excitement around this. And, I mentioned earlier, the board spent last week in Denver, both for our board meeting, but also to tour the city and the convention center and to see where this event will take place. It's going to be great, and really can't wait to see how many thousands of emergency nurses will be there. Looking at that General Assembly Hall is incredible because it means they're all going to be sitting in that room. So really looking forward to that. If you can't be there in person, please take advantage of the digital access option with live streaming 20 plus education sessions and the 2 general sessions. So everyone who registers for Emergency Nursing 2022 will receive access to that on-demand content through January 31st. So you have some time to review those and complete that. Everything you need to know about Emergency Nursing 2022 is at ena.org/EN22. And then you'll see that email come out. So once you get it, you'll be able to register. And again, the conference date's there, September 30th through October 3rd. So we'll shift gears a little to talk about our emergency nursing residency program. We're about a month away from the launch of this program, and really a key component to our ENA University. This program in particular is focused on delivering education and the resources needed for emergency nurses in particular to improve decision-making skills, clinical judgment, and in particular, acclimation to the ED. The program overall is an investment in nurses with the goal of improving retention rates, employee satisfaction, by helping transition new nurses into really a competent nurse and feeling confident about their skills towards the end of their orientation. And so for me, I had the really amazing opportunity to pilot this program in my ED at home. And so watched 2 pilots go through, 2 cohorts of residents go through, and it was an incredible to watch that partnership, not only with our nurse educators and the residents, but with our nurse educators and with ENA. And so everything they were doing was evidence-based and really linked to ensuring the success of the residents. It went very well, and excited to see this particular one launch. So you can learn more about the residency program by attending an upcoming webinar. It's on April 12th, or by listening to the recent ENA podcast, which also has information about the program. And that you can find at pod.link/ENA podcast. Another exciting, each of these slides are so exciting. So ENA recently had a major victory for one of our legislative priorities with the Dr. Lorna Breen Healthcare Provider Protection Act. This was passed in February and is currently awaiting the president's signature. This important law paves the way for funding designated specifically for programming and resources related to healthcare workers and the need to take care of themselves. Legislators heard our voice, and this is where Day on the Hill and the work we do there really makes a difference. And it proves or shows that we shouldn't have to go it alone when it comes to stress, burnout, and fatigue. So we're really excited to be heading back to Washington, D.C. this year for Day on the Hill in May. The dates are there on the slide, May 3rd and 4th. Our government relations team is building a really strong program, and we have an event in the works at the Capitol to highlight one of the biggest issues in our priority legislative agenda. And so we'll have more to come for all of you on that. So please be sure to connect with your state president if you're interested in attending. And again, it's not virtual this year, it's in person. And while it may not look exactly as though we've always done it, we are still there and using our voice to advocate for our profession. So pleased that you've all contributed to that. Another exciting one here, ENA's connection for the 20 under 40 program. So we are bringing this back. It was incredibly successful before, and a chance for us to honor some of the best and brightest in emergency nursing. For me, it was awesome to hear the stories of these new names and faces who are already making waves in our specialty. To say their collective accomplishments are impressive would be an understatement. The inaugural 20 under 40 class rocked, and I can't wait to see who's next. Applications for this program open on March 28th for the class of 2022 and will be featured in our October issue of Connection. Many of you can speak to the amazing benefits that ENA members have access to, but our membership team wants to encourage everyone to check out the list of full things available for just being a member. One of those questions you really want to be able to answer is, what does a membership offer me? And so here, re-engaged with ENA's valuable benefits by March 31st. So if you do it by March 31st for a chance to win the $500 Visa gift card, and all you have to do is visit ena.org/membership/explore ENA value. So take a minute to check out the page, share it with your peers and anyone else who you think really kind of needs some more information on the benefits of ENA membership. Okay, so coming soon, our ENA Election 2022. So we are just about 2 weeks away from the ENA election call for candidates. Opens on April 1st. And Matt Powers had put a note in the chat about it as well. This is an important step for many members who are looking to reach the next level in their commitment to the association. Whether you're interested in the Nominations and Elections Committee or considering a run for the ENA Board of Directors, the process isn't as scary as you may think. Everyone in leadership took that initial leap at some point and can speak to the fulfillment that comes with contributing to ENA at the highest level. Look for more information soon about how you could be a candidate for this year's election. Another favorite of mine, EN Week, the 5K. So another date to remember, and again, all of these dates are also on the website. There's a lot there, but is the start of registration for the 2022 EN Week virtual 5K. Hundreds of ENA members and their families and friends participated in our inaugural event in 2021. And like a few other things we've talked about, ENA social media platforms and email will help remind you of this. So the 5K is a great opportunity to celebrate during EN Week and a nice little connection to our Recharge theme for this year. And we will come back to Recharge shortly. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground and a lot of highlights. I want to check in on the comments quickly and see if there are any questions we can answer. Dan, is there anything?
Yeah, so let me just add one thing into the EN Week or the EN Week 5K. April 11th is the start of registration for that. So just make sure everybody can mark that date down. So looking through the questions and a couple of the comments, questions that were submitted actually as part of registration, which is a great way to get on the radar for us to be prepared, is around mentoring and recruiting and retaining nurses. And Jen, you talked a little bit about the residency program earlier. Can you get into a little bit about how that and some other things ENA is doing, whether it's mentoring or healthy work environment initiative, are really centered around the ideas of recruiting and retaining, and how ENA and obviously others can help to bring nurses in, keep them in the pipeline, but also to keep them around once they're in the ED.
Sure. And you raise a good point. The ENA residency program really is one, it's a great way to start their career in emergency nursing, feeling supported and well prepared for kind of their launch into independent practice. But they also are assigned a mentor through that program. And that was one of the things, having seen this pilot unfold, was a point person for them that isn't their preceptor along the way, and someone that can continue to connect with them once they're off orientation. That links directly to retaining them and kind of keeping them engaged in your department and emergency nursing in general. You also hit on, we have a mentorship program through the academy that is also available. So linking people that have similar interests there is also another strategy. And the underlying theme here is helping to create a healthy work environment, which is a focus of ENA through a variety of different ways. And ENA University and that mentorship program are just some of those really key ways to connect people.
On a similar note, there was also a question that was submitted just talking about how ENA looks at its public policy agenda to help address some of the issues facing the future of nursing, both with things like staffing shortages, but also tied to really the burnout, the stress, fatigue, and those issues that are pushing people away right now. You mentioned the Breen Act, which was a big step, but there's also another piece of legislation that is coming through that ENA is going to be supporting, which also looks at that issue. It's called the Future Advancement of Academic Nursing Act. And I know this is sort of brought to the board's attention last week, and we may hear more about it in the coming weeks, but that focuses more on the nursing faculty side of things to help keep nursing students coming through the system. Is there something more that you kind of learned about this last week, Jen?
I think that it's a good strategy to pair with the retention. And so there's two parts to this really in terms of nursing shortage. One is producing more people that can go through the education program. And that's really what that future advancement of academic nursing helps support. And ENA is interested in that and will continue to work through that. The other piece is that retention that we talked about. So when those are paired together, I think we're set up much better for success in terms of keeping nurses in emergency nursing.
A couple other quick questions, just so that everybody, in case you missed in the chat, the question about whether the 5K is a live event. It is a virtual event again this year. Obviously you can do it anytime during EN week, and you can do it anywhere on places that you prefer or familiar with from a trail or that perspective. Kimberly also asked if a bunch of people in the region can get together and do it. Sure, everybody can register, and we can find out and double check on group registration, but everybody can register individually and do it all together. It would be a great way for for a bunch of people to do it together, and your times go into the pool with everybody else across the country. So the more the merrier. I know the numbers were really strong last year, and I think we're on a good trajectory for an even bigger year this year. The other question, and this is more on the staff side, is asking about the recharge background that you've got, Jen. There's some interest. So we will talk with component relations and figure out if there's a way to kind of work that out through the states so that members can get access to it, or figure out if there's some other opportunities for people to get it. So recharge is resonating.
Yes, that is a perfect segue to our next topic. So we get to talk about recharge. And, I think for me, this resonated originally, and some of you have heard me say this in terms of what do we need this year, where we are as nurses, what would we want that really connects with us? And I think for me, this continues to connect with people in a variety of different ways. And so we're actually curious, how are things going for all of you? And so if you want to put comments in, we're going to be looking for that information there and happy to share it. But the challenges in front of us as emergency nurses haven't changed. They haven't let up yet. The world, as I mentioned earlier, is still complicated and not quite simpler yet. So we do have to still own how we engage and what we can do to take care of ourselves. And that's really the focus for Recharge, is how do you take care of yourself so that you can continue to take care of others? And so for me, this is not just a challenge I'm asking all of you. I try to ask it of myself as well. And looking at that in a variety of different ways. And so I think the more I think about it, the more this is not a one size fits all. This looks different for everyone. And there are so many different things that help you achieve this. And so as we kind of go through, we'll hear from all of you, or hope to hear from all of you, around what you're doing and what it is for you that helps re-energize you. And so this really is about what you can do for yourself and how we motivate one another to find that recharge. So if we go to our next, so here's our first question, and really a way that we commit to our challenge. And so what will you do for yourself today to recharge? And so I referenced for myself, this is a challenge I've asked myself as well. It does start for me with a 5K. So it's with a goal, I can achieve things in a better way. And so signed up for one on Mother's Day. It gives me a chance to focus on something, keep the work going involved in trying to achieve that goal. And it helps me personally gain a little bit of energy and some focus on what I'm doing. And so for you guys, I see a couple chats going through here, but Dan is probably tracking them too. What are we seeing?
So I'll start with Antoinette's comment, and she made it earlier as well, that recharge is definitely resonating. And I think we're seeing that in the chat, and we've certainly seen it in some other contexts. But some of the things referenced here from what are you doing for yourself today? I'm seeing from Shantae, she's taking a recharge day once a week. So instead of walking on a treadmill, she's walking outside. While that's not the easiest thing for her, and as she puts it in the nurse entrepreneur world, it's a conscious decision to step away from sort of the routine and what might be easier. And along those lines, Debbie references here that she's made a conscious decision to not talk about her day after she gets home. She wants to provide some recharge without necessarily reliving her day. And I think that's something we all go through. We all know we need to vent and kind of shed the day. But you don't realize how that eats away at time from and Jen, talk about that a little bit. Everybody goes through different types of stress and copes with it a different way, but how simple can it be to maybe just reframe how you end your day or transition from work to home in your estimation?
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. One, to not necessarily not talk about what you do, but to have that space between work and home. And maybe that helps you with a transition, even your drive home. What do you do? Do you listen to something? Do you try to unhook from kind of the stressors of work? And, it's actually even a little more than that. As I see some of these comments, some of them are big, right? Someone's going on a cruise. Awesome. These are also things you can do that are small. And so maybe it is taking 5 minutes to do the quick walk outside, or just to sit and be present somewhere. I think the biggest part that I would want all of you to take is that these don't have to be big, lofty, huge goals. They can be small things that you incorporate just to create some of that balance within yourself.
So a few other things you talk about, big things, small things. Julie Miller mentions, hanging out with her grandkids. Patty Kunzhauer talks about, a day a week with her granddaughters. So I think, those little things, those are definitely, right in the neighborhood sort of things. And Jen, I know you'll appreciate this one because it's a shout out back to leadership orientation and Jenny Evans. It's an email address, so I'm not sure who the person that put this in, but planning for a microburst of exercise when this call is done. So let's be honest, Jen, are you throwing some microbursts into your routine to keep you recharged?
So admittedly, that little box of cards is sitting on my desk. I've used it. It's a little tricky to figure out some of them in your office. But otherwise, yes, it's actually a great idea. And one even my team here at work has adopted.
So, here's sort of the comment that kind of ties it all together, which is really, the small things are the biggest things. And I think you referenced that earlier. We've got a couple that are actually, ideas that tie back to what our next commit to the challenge question will be. So we'll hold on to those for a second, but a couple of more thoughts that have been thrown in here. Watering the plants, walking, getting outside with the dog, for a few minutes here and there, just to step outside. I think, fresh air is really sort of underestimated, and it's not always easy in the wintertime, but, changing the line of sight and feeling something different other than office air is probably, or ED air is probably not a bad thing. So, Jen, anything else you want to talk about in terms of what everybody can do for themselves individually before you move on to that next question?
I love hearing these. I'm reading Amy's now that says play fetch for 5 minutes with my dog. I think these are things that even if you might have done them before, are also going to benefit you individually. And so recognize them as that. These might be normal parts of your day, but they still help you to remember to take care of you before you can take care of others. All right, so thank you guys for sharing there. We're going to ask you to share again. And this part of the challenge is a little bit different in that what's one thing that you can do to recharge at work? So related for yourself at work, or maybe it's your peers and your team and they're having kind of a rough day, and how do you help them consider this, or is there something you can do there? And so if you can put comments in the chat around that, we'd love to hear that. And I'm happy to share two different things for me at my hospital. One is for our nursing leadership team now they do weekly mindfulness sessions with our chaplain in-house. She leads them through, it's 15 minutes of their day, and they continue about their work. And the second piece that's really focused on staff is, someone just said this, perfect timing, Kimberly Harper. We have a dog that greets nurses and staff coming in to work. And so that dog is part of our pet therapy program and is just there to offer them kind of a nice hello when they come in. That dog has been wildly successful and really well received. So I think that reinforces the point that these don't all need to be huge efforts. They can be small and they still matter quite a bit. So let's look in the comments again.
Well, the pet therapy really jumped out, and there was also a reference to the hospital canine unit, to also offer a little bit of furry interaction to break the tone a little bit at times. I'm seeing a lot in here about sort of introspective, focused breaths. It was brought up as something to do while along with hand hygiene, focusing your breaths in those moments, stretch and breathing, getting outside for 5 minutes of positive reflection. You mentioned, it's important to end the shift with a bit of reflection with the team, see how they're doing, if there's something they want to share about the shift. And I think that's a pretty interesting, way to, put a bow on the day in a certain respect, with everyone. So it's not just you worked hard together, but all then scatter off, to your separate corners. Uplifting recognitions throughout this, Terry mentions a particular hospital platform. It's created so much excitement, sharing it through their Facebook. So it seems like there's a lot of little things that maybe get kind of lost when things get crazy. Have you found that as well, Jen, that, there may be some good things in place that are sort of morale boosters, but when things get crazy, it all kind of, goes to the side, because the work is what's dominating.
I agree. And I think that's true for probably emergency nurses in particular, and that your day is very unpredictable. And so even just pausing for 5 seconds to say, where am I? While you're washing your hands, what am I doing? Who am I focused on? Those kind of bring you back to the present. And while the recharge isn't exactly mindfulness specific, it can be anything. I think that is one of those things that puts some perspective on the moment for you.
Couple other things that were in here. Barbara Stewart mentioned, after encouraging so many staff members to reach out to EAP, she took her own advice, and now she's doing things like Aqua Zumba, going to thrift stores and visiting, doing things that sounds like that she really enjoys, but also doing some of that mindfulness breathing to do a little bit of introspective and centering that has been talked about. Looking at a couple more. So, even more, even more conversation around pets. I think pets are sort of an underestimated, no pun intended, an underdog here of things that people are finding some comfort and relief in. But when to kind of go back to the one point in the EDs, Jen, everybody knows what the problems are, so it may be really hard to kind of push past that, but see that some of these little things can really have an impact on how you're dealing with stress or sort of the residual burnout and well-being issues that are started driving things. How, you kind of touched on this, but how in seeing and working with the nurses at your hospital, is it that simple sometimes is to just offer those reminders, or are there a lot of layers to getting to people wanting to recognize that they can do things for themselves?
It's a hard question to answer in some way because I think it depends on the person in the moment on their day. But I wouldn't let that sort of unknown if you're going to make a difference with them stop you from encouraging it, because I think after a few times of that, it does become, what do I need to do? And you don't really know where people are at in their day. And so I think asking or reminding or saying, have you tried this? Can we do this? Often is very welcome, but they may not know how to initiate it. And so I think that's actually a really key piece. It only takes the one person to start maybe a new trend or a new theme in your department or a new initiative to be able to make a difference.
And Kimberly Harper made a reference that they've called in, working with local police and fire to the debriefing teams after certain events, and how that builds a little bit of solidarity. And I imagine there's some relatability, especially if it's a high-end incident or some sort of mass injury or casualty type event. That level of awareness that others are going through something similar or experience the same thing. There's a benefit to that, even if it is more coping, right?
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you guys. That was great to see everyone's response and hear some of that. I would kind of encourage you all. The next step to that is some of this challenge is we want it to be on social media. We want you to influence and impact other emergency nurses and other people, quite honestly. And so hashtag recharge challenge, post photos, put yourself out there. I think it will gain traction, and you guys are brave. You can do this, but post that hashtag with it, and we'll track it. We also may find some fun way to use all those photos in the end to show you all, what did you do this year, and what strategies worked for people truly on the front lines for the past 2 years. And so put that out there. Love to see the photos and what you guys are doing. Okay, so let's go. Thank you. So we do have a few minutes left for questions, comments. You can put those in the chat. We can answer them that way. But really looking for, and this is our next slide, it's really the point here is how else can ENA support you? And, for me, I think support means different things to different people. And so we're really looking for, from your perspective, what can ENA do to support you as an emergency nurse? And so you guys can enter some comments there. I see the hashtag got posted, and then I'll check in with Dan. Do we have other questions that we can answer or that came in early?
So we've crossed off most of the questions that came in. I think, as you might imagine, a lot of the questions do center around the issues that you referenced in your messages, over the last several weeks, and you touched on earlier, around staffing issues, around, nurse well-being, and really kind of tying it all back to ENA's overall approach to how we talk about things, but also what are we doing when it comes to either advocacy or things like Healthy Work Environment Initiative. And, there was a reference about, engaging hospital leaders, and ED leaders. I think that's something that is definitely a part of the Healthy Work Environment Initiative, that, changing culture. And I think that's that's an important piece in all this. And I'd be also interested in, from your perspective, Jen, over the last couple of months, what are the types of things that you're hearing? Because we see these things people post all over the place, and the themes seem to be the same, but are people, when they've reached out to you directly, are you hearing anything different, or are you hearing about sort of unique challenges, places that maybe, they're not dealing with staffing issues, they're on the other side of the spectrum, but they're still dealing with the pandemic and whatnot?
Yeah, and so I certainly staffing is probably the most prominent thing we've heard about. And the staffing in general varies depending on where you are, what type of ED you're in. But in general, I think the general feel of our staff is very similar, right? People are, we've talked about this, they're tired, they're fatigued, they're trying to figure out, what has just happened in the past 2 years and where am I now and where am I going? But the pandemic has also put us in an interesting spot. And so for my own department, we have less volume now than we've had in 2 years. And so people are trying to figure out, oh, is this what our life used to look like? That's as much of a strange transition as when we went up in volume. And so I think it's that sorting out, what does an ED look like now post-pandemic? And do we look exactly like we did before? And what does that mean for us as nurses? It's not a question I have an answer to yet. I think it's something we all have to talk through and figure out. But there's probably things we would do differently now than we had done before. The tired fatigue part is probably the most prominent, and I think that's where the recharge component for me resonates the most, in that we can't fix it for every individual, but we can try to give them the right tools to continue and figure out how to navigate through this. And I do like the point around the leadership. So your nurse leaders are also nurses, right? And they're in very similar positions to all of you as staff, and may not be able to figure that out either. So encouraging them to recharge or find ways to recharge as an individual, that then they can help you do the same. So it's almost like really supporting your whole team to focus on that so that they can then better support each other.
Something that you mentioned came up in the chat. Terry Foster made a reference to networking being a very one of the most helpful aspects of this association organization. The opportunities to connect with members literally through the ENA Connect community, because there's a lot of human resources, so to speak, and other nurses and what you can learn. But then also the just the opportunity to share experiences, and sort of what we try to aim for here with the virtual town halls, just also looking at things like and Antoinette brought up the forgetting leaders, as part of the focus on frontline folks that are going, what they're going through. I'm sure that leaders are coping with a totally, sometimes a very different environment, while also trying to understand and fix and help what's happening on the front line itself. So really just a lot of different types of comments, around what you've been mentioning, Jen. Also looking at opportunities for Day on the Hill, and I know our GR team is logged on, so they're watching. But there's a reference here to looking at boarding with mental health patients, especially children, as a possible opportunity for something at Day on the Hill, as we look at our legislative priorities. And I thought there was one other thing I wanted to share. And Kathy Van Dusen mentioned sort of, developing resources for organizations that promote healthy work environment for ED nurses. And in the bigger scope, the Healthy Work Environment Initiative looks at the individuals, looks at the nursing leaders. So there's more information that is going to continue to evolve around that as well. So Jen, you've covered a lot, and you must have answered all the questions, because there's been no more questions. So you can hold that over Ron and Mike's head, because they always had lots of questions, right?
Well, I appreciate the comments we've gotten so far, and I do want to highlight Terry. I think it was Terry that made the comment around ENA Connect. And for me, there's been an experience that I hadn't maybe anticipated in terms of the introducing yourself and sharing how you're recharging, and that seeing new people put comments in there and being able to connect with them has been a real, it's truly a gift to see them connect with us. Many of them are students. And so I think as members in this organization, you guys have a lot of influence and a lot of ability to really encourage and engage some of our newest nurses. So I think that's an opportunity for all of us. And then I just want to comment now, there's some networking, education, and wellness. Those are all things that certainly we will remain focused on as an association as we go forward. And so I want to say thank you. Thank you for the chance to do this, but also for kind of being here, being engaged, and supporting this forum in terms of information sharing. This is a nice way to connect, and one that obviously we can then share with others who weren't able to attend. So thank you for that, but also thank you for all that you're doing. What I know is that you've all taken time, and I said that in the beginning, but you're taking care of our patients, or you're leading your departments, or you're educating your departments. You're doing some role to promote the profession of emergency nursing, and so thank you for that. That's incredible and really shouldn't go unnoticed. So thank you, and we're happy that you were all here today. And otherwise, enjoy your week.